Welcome back, everybody. Unfortunately for this week's insight, it is just me and there's no guest speaker to add a bit of spice into the mix. But I'm sure that some new additions will be making an appearance in the near future. But anyway, for this week's video, I want to talk about comfort zones. But before we get right into that, over the long weekend, myself and some of my mates went to Innes National Park, which you may have heard of, depending on whether you're in South Australia or not. But yeah, we stayed there for a couple of nights and I got a little bit of footage from that, which I thought might be quite picturesque. And so yeah, I'll just chuck that over the top of this video. And I guess the actual experience in itself has some ties to what I'm talking about. So that's also nice. And if you can hear some rain in the background, well, yeah, it's a bit torrential right now. So where do I begin? I guess we'll start off with well, for me, routines and schedules and reminders, they're usually pretty potent within my everyday life. And I try to use them as much as I can just to stay on track, and they're pretty effective for bolstering productivity and like I said, just trying to form some good habits. However, from experiences similar to the one when I went camping, as soon as I step outside of like these routines and just my comfort zone in general, what I'm used to, that seems to be the periods where I learn the most, and I learn the most about myself and about other things, and at times are just the most valuable experiences. I'll get into a couple of examples very soon, but just this knowledge that as soon as I step out into some foreign territory and just explore something I haven't done before, the guarantee that I'm gonna learn more about myself than I ever could have before. Well, I think that was a major reason in deciding to travel this year, full stop, because, well, whatever happens with it, whether I have a great time or a shocking time, I despise it, I love it, whatever the result is, I can be 100% assured that by the time I come back and I get on that plane back to Adelaide, I'm gonna be a different person. I'm gonna have a far better knowledge of who I am and in which situations I cope with and what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are. I'm just gonna learn so much more about myself. And although right now it's daunting and it's most certainly stepping out of my comfort zone, that reward at the end of the day will be worth it. Anyway, so like I said, just using an example, even just going camping over the weekend. I was saying to one of my mates, but it turns out that I think I learned quite a bit about myself. Now, being very much a city kid for the entirety of my life, outdoor activities such as camping, well, they were scarcely seen within my childhood. Much preferred to stay inside and stay cozy. So for this reason, going away independently just for a couple of days with my mates in the great outdoors, although that seems relatively pathetic to most, for me that was the first time I've ever actually done that. And yeah, from the outset, it was definitely leaving what I was used to and therefore my comfort zone. I knew that before I went, some of my greatest weaknesses, which I'm sure my mates are all aware of, but for instance, being practical and yeah, virtually just anything with my hands, I typically tend to be pretty poor at. And that incapacity most certainly stems down from my dad, who I'd say is even worse than me. I'm not sure if we touched on that last week, but yeah, no, he's useless. Even more so, and until 3 days ago, I'd never driven a country road. I think I might have once when I was on my L's with my driving instructor, but that was about as far as my experience went. I think I set up one tent at schoolies. Actually, no, my mate set that tent up, so I'm not even sure if I've ever set up a tent before. That's how miserable I am. Maybe I've tried to just get in there and look useful and maybe hold a couple of poles while other people wrap Velcro around them, but yeah, nah, I'm lost when it comes to that sort of thing. So driving 300 kilometers to the Yorke Peninsula and then the possibility of coming back during a storm at night, which turned out to be exactly the case, well, no, that definitely seemed challenging. The experience most certainly seemed like a blast, but I still had my concerns. However, nearly as per always the case, just plunging into the deep end and trying something I hadn't done before, it paid off. Because, well, I didn't get T-boned by a truck, which was a good start, and more importantly, I ended up having a really sick and just memorable time. Although my practical incapabilities were most certainly highlighted, which, by the way, is probably evident in the fact that I was the one who was shooting them, like put up the tent, like within those shots of the tent being. Yeah, nah, you probably didn't see me in them. Like I did try to help out a couple of times, but I just ended up being more of a nuisance than anything. So I thought, nah, you know what, I'll take a step back, let the boys handle that, and I'll get some cool footage of them doing it. Yeah, from the whole experiences Some of my strengths, such as organizing, I think, well, they were reiterated to me. I'm not sure if any of you guys can relate with this, but it was almost as though the actual planning aspect of a trip and having to get everything set up, your food, your equipment, your clothing, like where you're gonna go, all those details which are pretty important, that's almost as fun as the actual experience in itself in a way. I really love to plan projects, and leaving my comfort zone in this instance to do something which I hadn't done before, well, that taught me exactly that. Now, like, the sheer gravity of this notion, which I'm sure you've all heard before, which is like, yeah, don't get complacent and keep trying to push yourself in every way possible. I know it's cheesy, but far out, it's dead set true. And it extends far beyond just a camping trip. Whether it's from like a creative stance or a sporting stance, or to do with your health or relationships or fitness, well, I know that for me, unless I'm actively seeking to experiment and to push myself, my progress is just gonna be at a standstill. Only when I dive into a new foreign aspect of whatever I'm doing, that's when I seem to make the biggest jumps. And quite frankly, I'm actually just not that good at doing it. I do get complacent and I just get really comfortable. And well, creatively speaking, setting myself a project which goes over a year, which roughly consists of the same types of videos, in many ways, it just leaves a lot of temptation to rely on a formula and not push myself and find my limits. Only when I'm trying new things, such as changing up the style of a video, maybe making it a little bit more vloggy, or introducing guests, or trying some different color grading or sound design or music techniques, all these various facets of filmmaking out there, that is when I'll actually learn. And regardless of whether this switch up is successful or just turns out to be utter shit, I know that I'd always rather just try it out than die not knowing at all. I think it's likely that you guys probably would have already heard this exact message before, but I think it's still important to spread because it's something that I've personally only really learned from experience. And just the concept of leaving your comfort zone wherever you can, over the last year, it seems to have had a major influence on some of the decisions that I've made, which aren't necessarily that easy. So yeah, that about wraps it up. Thank you for tuning in once again. And as per always, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on the matter. If you have any, a like and a sub would be unreal. But until next time, ciao.
Proud of the boys.
Proud of the cleanup effort, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Not proud of one member. Me. Not gonna listen.
Me.
It's not me, is it, Ben? Okay, good.
Well, you didn't do a great job, Harrison.
No, but Harrison... I mean, I did clean the table and make the fire, so...
You know what?
The most important thing is just simple.
I'll make it up to you guys somehow. Maybe later tonight. Just a couple of under the table things.